Welcome back on Diamond. Today I want to propose you a video about the review about the rules for the Ossiarch Bonereapers 2023 Battletome, because in such way you are able to focus on only the rules for the match play and so on, and in the description you can find the timeline about the main parts about the rules, so that you can go to the points that you need to add the referral and to see about. Remember that about the points and the units you can find the parts about, but also you had the app of iOS and Android that you had the referral to have the various units always updated and so on. But every time that there will be a release of new rules, update, facts and so on, and bring anyway new videos that you can use the referral. Anyway, the playlist in the description, and I update the playlist each time I release something new. We can begin with the battle traits specific for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. The first thing that we can notice is that has been removed the one related about Lords of the Ossiarch Empire, but it was only related about Nagash and Arkan, and that rule it's in the datasheet about the model, so it's not a problem about. Then we have the Ossiarch Bonereapers Legends, that it's the same that we have seen before, and it present you the ones that are the subfaction available for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, that are the Mortisan Praetorians, the Petifex Elites, the Stalliac Lords, the Ivory Host, the Null Meridian, and the Crematorians. Anyway, we'll see these subfaction more in detail later in this same video. Then we have ranks unbroken by descent, that it's the same that we've seen before, so that the Ossiarch Bonereapers does not take any battleship test, and I can anticipate you so that these make the Inspired Presence useless for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and it's not bad. Then we have the Deathless Warriors as battle trait, that make that the Ossiarch Bonereapers units as a ward save of 6+, and we see that we can also improve this one, that it's quite intriguing. This one, it's something that it's not completely new, because since quite a lot of time the rules have been changed from the one of the old Battletome of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, so it's something that it's quite nice to see. Then we have the Nadrit weapons, and here you have to pay attention, because before this was a rule that was specific for the Mortal Guard and the Cavalry of Riders. Now instead it's for all the melee weapons except mounts that are for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, so all the models as such one, so that if a modified hit roll for a melee attack made with a melee weapon by a Ossiarch Bonereaper, it's a 6, natural 6. That attack explodes and scores 2 hits to the target instead of 1. Obviously you have to roll separately for wounding than the target for each hit. This ability has not effect on attacks made by the mounts, and it's obvious, but it's better to tell again, unless noted otherwise, and I think that it's obvious also this one. And so this is a really main change, and it's quite important because it improved quite a lot the potential of a lot of units. Then we had the Renderless Discipline. This is something that has been changed quite a lot of time from the old Battletome, and you can see that has been quite complicated. But first thing to notice is that now they are normal command point. So, as I said, you can use the command abilities, all the ones that are available, also the general one that before were forbidden. But we see later that anyway the command abilities about the Ossiarch Bonereapers as something peculiar that you have to remember. Anyway, now you have to count as usual, so 1 if you start the round, and 2 if you had the second round in a battle round. But remember that you generate also 1 extra command point if there are at least 3 or more friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers units on the battlefield. You have 2 command points if there are 5 or more friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers units on the battlefield, and you gain 3 extra command points if there are 7 or more Ossiarch Bonereapers units on the battlefield, and these are cumulative. So it means that if you have 7 units of the Ossiarch Bonereapers on the battlefield, you have 3 plus 2 plus 1. So it means that you have 6 to start with as command point, to which you have to add the one that it's about the one of the turn if you start first and 2 if you start second, and you also can generate other ones, so it's really quite intriguing. But we see that you can spend quite fast such command points, so you generate a lot of them, but you spend also quite fast them. And remember that you can't replenish them till the battle round start again. So you have really to pay attention about such one, because it can be quite something that you have to pay attention to, and how you can manage such amount of command points. And now we can treat a bit deeper the knowledge about the command abilities for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. First of all, it's specified that the Ossiarch commands can be used along, as I said before, to the normal command abilities, so you can use both of them without any problem. Obviously, Inspiring Presence is useless because we have the battle trait that make us immune to the battle shock. Then we have to remember that the Ossiarch commands are the ones that are all in the datasheet of the units of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, or eventually other things that call them as such, or later we see the amount of command abilities that are the Ossiarch commands that specify, but right now. But we have also to remember that in addition, the restriction that you cannot use the same command ability more than once in the same phase does not apply to Ossiarch commands. The normal ones are still limited to only one, but the Ossiarch commands not. And you have also to remember that you can use the same Ossiarch command more than once in the same phase, as long as that command is used by a model that has not already used a command in that phase, and it is received by a unit that has not already received a command in that phase. So remember such limitation, but anyway, you have really quite amazing things that you have to remember, because this is amazing. And now we go to see a bit more deep about the Ossiarch commands specific for all the units about the army of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And we can begin with the specific Ossiarch commands. So the first one that we see is reform ranks, that make that you can use this command ability in your movement phase. The unit that receive the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit, obviously. The unit can retreat in that phase and still charge later in the same turn. This is really quite amazing as one, because it means that you can, for example, retreat and charge another unit, and or retreat and charge in the way that you can finally way to maybe conquest an objective, try to damage the opponent unit. But something to notice is that this was before, in the previous Battletome, the one that it was a specific command ability for the Stalliarch Lords. Instead, here it's now available for everyone, and it's something that I quite like, because it's quite strategic as option eventually to remember to use, because this is really quite amazing command ability. And then we have unstoppable events that we have seen also in the previous Battletome. And here we have that you can use this command ability in your movement phase when you pick a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit to make a normal move. Remember, normal move. Add 3 inch to that unit move characteristic until the end of that phase. Anyway, it's still quite amazing as one, because it means that you can approach eventually faster to an enemy unit to charge it, or eventually you can make that you can simply move away from enemy, or you can try to move in the way that it's faster to move to control an objective. So there are quite a lot of strategic ways to use such one, and it's something that I suggest to remember, because it's one of the basic things for the command ability to use for your army. So quite amazing one. Then another one of the add-on brought by a White Dwarf additional rules for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, that it's Redney Construct, that make that you can use this command ability at the end of your movement phase. The unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit that is more than 3 inch from all enemy units. You can heal up to D3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if no wounds are allocated to it, you can return a number of slain models to that unit that have a combined wounds characteristic of D3 or less. This is something that it's amazing, but remember that if it's a charter, you can combine it eventually with Heroic Recovery, and eventually you have also the Ossiarch Bonereapers to add also and heal the models, so you can really enjoy quite a lot of things about such. So if you are not in close combat, because you have to be more than 3 inch from enemy units, you can apply and heal multiple units with such one. So it's something that it's amazing, and I really suggest you to think about, because it's something that can really make that your models, that could be for example the Gothic Sylvester or so on, can replenish their wounds and so fight and last more. And I think that it's really quite one of the best about the, I can say, command ability that you can use. Remember that eventually you can apply and combine it with rally. And remember that rally has changed the way that you work. So remember that now you have to pay attention about the wounds that you can replenish for that model, but still you can really play a lot with such a combination of abilities and command abilities. So it's quite amazing one that you have to remember. The next one is Counter Strike, that make that you can use this command ability in the enemy charge phase. After an enemy unit has finished a charge move, the unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit that is within 3 inch of an enemy unit that made a charge move in the same turn. So remember such one, so the one that has charged, and more than 3 inch from all other enemy units. So it has to be technically a 1v1, so a unit with another unit of the enemy. Add 1 to the wound roll for attacks made with melee weapons by that unit in the following combat phase. It's a sort of rephrasing, remaking of the Mortisan Praetorians as command ability of the previous Battletome. But still, it's quite nice, because, okay, it's quite limited, because you had to wait that the enemy charge you, you had to be only in combat with that specific enemy that charge you, and not other enemy units. So it's not so simple, but at the same time, you gain the possibility to make the +1 to wound, so it's really quite useful as command ability. Limited, but useful. And then have impenetrable ranks. This is an amazing one, follow me. You can use this command ability when a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit is picked as the target of an attack, so when it's taken as the target, and it can be so cause attacks both from the shooting or from the melee. And remember that it's not only related about shooting, so the shooting phase or the combat phase. It can be also eventually in the hero phase, but you have to receive attacks to be target of attacks. That unit must receive the command. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the word roll for that unit for the purpose of the Deathless Warrior battle trait. So only the warrior battle trait. And remember, so that it means that that unit or those units, because you can apply to multiple units, come to be from 6+ to 5+. So it's quite nice, such one. So it's a really amazing way to reinforce the defense of a unit. So it's really quite nice. Moreover, because it applies for both the normal wounds and mortal wounds. So nice and amazing. Then we have Bludgeon, that it's an important command ability. You can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. The unit that received the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit. Improve the rank characteristic of the unit's melee weapon by 1 until the end of that phase. Remember that you can apply in your own or your opponent one. And this is the one that in the previous Battletome was referred to be the specific command ability of the Petifex Elites. So this is quite amazing, because it means that you can apply to all the ones of the sub-alliances available this one. And so it means that you can improve quite a lot your way to damage the opponent. So really quite nice. And then we have Unflinching Coordination. This is command ability that we are yet seeing, because I've been brought with the previous Battletome in Wide Half to update that one, and it is quite undervaluated, but this is quite amazing, and this is even improved this one, so that You can use this command ability in the combat phase after a friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit that it's a hero, remember that it has to be a hero that you begin with, has fought for the first time in that phase. The unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit, it can be any Ossiarch Bonereapers unit, that has not yet fought in that combat phase, that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, so in close combat, and wholly within 12 inches of that friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers hero. That unit fight immediately. And you have to notice that this it allows you to combat with 2 heroes, because you can make that a Ossiarch Bonereapers hero make the combat, and immediately another Ossiarch Bonereapers hero can do the same, eventually also a Ghost Dub, Harvester or so on. But you have also to remember that if the unit that you pick immediately that you have to choose to fight again, it's a Ossiarch Bonereapers hero, you can't make that another unit can be picked to use such one. So this it's only available to make one step. You can't make that, you can make hero, 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 and then a unit, for example. So pay attention about such details. So you can really quite coordinate, but there is a little limit that before anyway even didn't allow you to take as the second a hero again. But this is something that allow you to gain quite nice, because you can think that you can make a combat and then instead of adding something else, you immediately try, for example, to bring a unit that fight completely to kill a unit, for example, before start to make attacks or other things. So it can be really quite intriguing. This one is much better than you think, because it allows you to, I can say, interrupt the combat sequence, and this is quite amazing. So remember that there is. And I've had the command trait. Here we have really quite intriguing command trait, so much that if you are going to go to select another additional enhancement, you have to pay attention about if to select a artifact or a command trait, because you can gain quite a lot from both of them, so it's quite amazing. The first one, it's Dark Acolyte, that it's wizard only. I suggest you to give it to a Soul Mason eventually, to a Mortisan anyway, but still there is eventually the option to associate it with the artifact of Arcane Tome and give to a Lich Cavalos, being a wizard, so to give this command trait. It's a crazy thing, it's not useful, but still there is. So if the first spell that this general attempt to cast in that phase is successfully cast, the spell cannot be unbound. And here it's quite intriguing. It's something that we have seen done by action before, thanks to the update from the Void Half to the previous Battletome of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. So anyway, it's quite nice, and it's something that it doesn't require an action, so it's automatic, and it's much better even now. So we have Show Superiority. While this general is on the battlefield, roll a dice before your opponent spend any command point to use a command ability. On a 5+, your opponent must spend 2 command points to use the command instead of 1. So it's really quite nice, because it's on all the battlefield that go to influence, and it can really decrease or even forbid the opponent to activate some command abilities. So I think that this is quite interesting. It's okay on a 5+, it's not so sure, but still quite a potential option. Then we have Mighty Exhaustion, that make that ignore negative modify to save rolls for attacks that target this general. So ignore the ranks, technically all the ranks. And it's quite nice, because it's even better than Eternal, because it can be improved anyway. So quite a lot of options. Then we have Crafty from Bespawn, that make that after this general has fought for the first time, at the start of each battle round, add 1 to the attack characteristic of this general weapons for the rest of the battle. This effect is cumulative. This is something that you associate to the Lich Cavalos for sure. And anyway, it's amazing if you associate, for example, with the artifact Morrow Path, because you can attacks, heal yourself, gain more attacks, and so make a sort of cycle. So it can give you quite a lot of interesting option. But at the same time, as for the Mighty Archon, it's only referred about the model itself, so it's not so synergic, and it has a lot of value, but you have to think about. And I have my favorite, that it's Aura of Sterility, set at 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attack made with melee weapon that target friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit wholly within 12 inch of this genre. So this is the amazing of the protection, because okay, it's only wholly within 12 inch, but still it can give you quite a lot of protection and make that you can resist to the opponent and so on, even if it try to fire you, for example, for counter attack or so on. So it has a lot of interesting things that it can be used against, and here it can save you quite a lot, because decreasing the option about the missile weapons, it's not bad, never, because it doesn't have the range about what unit will go to influence, but the unit that you protect. So about this, you can really free choose which ones you want, and I really suggest you to think eventually to use the enhancements to have more command traits eventually, because in such a way you are able to make that you are able to pick more of these and make quite nice combinations, because these command traits are really suited to be combined to have a synergic effect on the army, so quite amazing. Then we can move to the relics of the Empire that are specific artifacts for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, all the ones. So we can see these ones and then the one specialized. The first that we see is Load of Saturation that add 1 to word rolls for the beers. Here you have to pay attention, because you have a word save that it's a 6+, and when you apply the impenetrable ranks, you can move to 5+, and with this you can arrive to a 4+. And remember that eventually, if you instead have the spell that give you the 4+ word, you can with this move to a 3+, but in that case it will be only with the ones that are related about the mortal wounds. So this it's quite nice, but it's limited to the charter. So if you want to protect a charter, for example, Lich Carlos or your general that can be a Mortisan, and you want to protect it so that it can't be so easily slain, this is the way. But I prefer something that it's more synergic with the rest of the army to play with. So it's quite good, but pay attention if it's something that you need or something that you use because you ended what you needed and you need something that you make the thing stay there, using this charter, for example, Lich Carlos, as the main stopper for the opponent army. Could be useful that way anyway. The next one, it's Marpat. It's in some ways similar to the previous one, but it's different. Each time the bearer fight, after all their attacks has been resolved, you can heal up to a number of wounds allocated to the bearer equal to the number of wounds and mortal wounds caused by those attacks that were allocated to enemy units. So this could be quite intriguing if you think, because the first one was about preventing the damage. This is about healing the damage that the model gained. So it's really quite interesting. Moreover, if you think that you can combine, for example, this, that you could be damaged and so on, maybe you can suffer the wounds and then bring up these attacks and heal. For example, it would be perfect for Avery Host as Legion 1, or you can anyway combine with other option so that you can really create some intriguing parts. So I think, for example, using unflinching coordination so that you can attack with a hero and make another hero using this so that it can damage and at the same time heal itself. So there are some combination, but still it's something that it's more vampiric than Ossiarch, but the one that it's quite interesting. It's that this is healing, but it's only on the model. So you have to understand, as for the first one, if it's suited for you to have something that it's only referred about that specific model or more synergic. This is a choice based on what you want to play and how you want to play. Then we have Mindblade, and this one I think that it's not so great. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapon at the end of the combat phase if any wound or mortal wound caused by attacks made with that weapon were allocated to an enemy hero in that phase, and that hero was not slain. That hero cannot carry out heroic action for the rest of the battle. Okay, it's good because it prevents heroic action by the hero, so it's not bad. But at the same time, you have to remember that you have to target a hero with such sword. And it's also true that eventually you can use, for example, reform ranks so that you can move out and then again charge back in the way, or you can use such weapon nicely. But the problem is it is really useful because you should try to kill the hero, not to try to forbid him to make the actions and leave him alive. So I'm not so sure that it's so great, this thing. So okay, it could be quite intriguing, but at the same time I don't think that it's one of the best that are available as artifact, and you can use few artifacts, so it's not my first choice and even second choice. It then had the artifacts specific for the Mortisan. The first one that we see is Luminshite, that it's only for the Mortisan Reapers, and makes subtract 1 from hit and wound rolls for attack that target the bear while they are within 3 inches of enemy units. Remember that this is applied for both the shooting and the close combat. Still, it's okay, but you have to be in close combat to be able to apply, so it's not so great. And sincerely, I don't like too much, as I said, artifacts that are only about the character. Moreover, if they're not so great, because okay, you start out one to hit and wound rolls, but there are a lot of bonuses that you can apply to the enemy, and so it's not so useful in my opinion about such. Okay, it's nice, but I think I prefer to have something else in close combat, because sincerely the Mortisan Reapers was not so great in the old Battletome, and it's not so great in the new battle, this one. So it's not my first choice, and so maybe no, I don't think that I could even use the Soul Reaper, so I'm not so sure that I'll be able to use even such artifact. And then we had the Artisan's Key, that it's only for the Mortisan Boneshaper. It's something that we have seen also in the old Battletome, but it's good to see now, and it's improved. Because before you use the bearer's ability, roll a dice on a 3+, instead before it was on a 4+, you can either pick 2 units within 6 inches of the bearer to be affected by the Boneshaper ability instead of 1. Or you can pick 1 unit within 6 inches of the bearer to be affected by the Boneshaper twice the ability. So it's quite nice, because if you think it's not so great as, for example, a Arcan or a Catacos, but on a 3+ you can anyway make twice, and on the same unit eventually. So it's not bad. Okay, the range it's only 6 inches, but still it's something that if I play a Boneshaper, it means that with this you can technically save another Boneshaper. Okay, the advantage of having 2 Boneshapers is that they can be deployed in 2 different parts of the battlefield, so it can cover better. But still, if you think that you can having something that it's for name character, but anyway spending much less points, I think that could be quite an intriguing, at least adding, because anyway you can include the other ones and use these to be the general, for example, and so being a Mortisan having access to other units, and at the same time having something that can heal at least decently. So I don't think that it's bad, and this it's one of the artifacts that if you are going to play the Boneshaper, obviously, I suggest you to take note. And then we had the Bone Abyss, that it's only for Surmasons. Sincerely, Surmason, if in the old Battletome, I think that it was a must-have. Now, I'm not so sure that I'll even include one. Still, I love the model, but not what it can do, even if it's a good mage. And this artifact for sure I'd never buy to a Surmason, because each time the bear successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, add 1 to the attack characteristic of the bear ossified close until the end of the turn. At least it will be until the end of the battle, but what I need a mage, because the Surmason is a mage to go to battle. Okay, it can be useful, but I have no other artifacts to deploy. Sincerely, I have quite a lot more choices to use than this one, because Surmason should not see other than its first to the combat. So this one for sure I'm not glad to see. So I prefer really. Yet I'm quite dubious about the Surmason itself, but surely this artifact it's a complete no. And I had the Cottizar cartouche. This is only for the Ossificator and add one to the wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within 9 inches of the bear. Technically, this is a way to make the Ossificator be able to do everything, because with the spell, if it's able to cast the spell, it will be able to make that it can cast so that it can select different units of the Morte Clawless, the Cottizar Vest, and the Morgas to give them the enhancements and make that they can be also made in the way that they can be with this followed and improved other options. But here you have really to pay attention because it's really quite heavy to keep to this, and to be able to cast the spell without any problems, you should give you the option about having the Dark Acolyte to this, so that if it's able to cast, and it's the genre obviously, or anyway it's a genre that you have given them enhancement about the command trait, you are able to make the efforts valid. So I don't think that it's so sure about. Maybe this is quite good if you are able to give a lot of enhancements so that you have a lot of choices, or if you are playing with a small amount of points, so you can go to select this model and so having a flexible options. But here it's quite a lot based on what you're going to select for. So pay quite a lot of attention, because here you have also the problems about what you can give. The advantage of this is that it's not related only about the Mortal Guard and the Carlos de Riders as for the Surmason. So you have a choose eventually to take. So pay attention, because this is quite, I can say, a trap eventually to play with, and you have to pay quite a lot of attention to such option. And then we can see about the spell lures for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And the first spell that we see is Empower Nadrit Weapons, that has a casting value of 5+, so quite easy to cast, and a range of 24 inch. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within range, but anyway it's 24 inch, and visible to the caster until the start of your next hero phase. The Nadrit Weapons battle trait triggers on a modified roll of 5 on hit instead of 6. Remember that there is a limitation about the Ivory Host Legion, but still it's quite good, and sincerely I think that it will be quite easy to have this in your roster of spells available, because it's one of the best, because as it is now you can cast not only on the Mortal Guards or on the Carlos of Riders, but on all the units, at least one of the units of your Ossiarch Bonereapers, and so this is really not bad at all. And so this it's one of the, I can say, most suggested spells to take for your army of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Now have Protection of Nagash, that it's similar to what we see in the previous Battletome, and it's a casting value of 6. It's casted on the wizard itself, and if successfully cast at the end of any phase, if any wounds or mortal wounds were allocated to the caster in that phase from an attack made with a melee weapon, so pay attention, only melee weapon, not shooting, not ranged and so on, only melee weapon, and the caster was not slain, remove them from the battlefield and set them up again on the battlefield more than 9 inch from all enemy units. After setting up the caster, this spell is unbound. So this is something that you have to think, because if before it was something that you really thought to have, because it could preserve a lot the models, and they could even use, for example, to trigger the effect to go to conquer objective and so on, make the wounds and so on the model. The problem is that now it's only about melee, and so it's technically quite useless. So if before it was quite must-have, at least for example for Arcan, now it's okay, good, but at the end not so good. So think if you really need such one, or you want to give to, for example, Arcan or one wizard, and try to survive enough to have this activated so that it can save you. So think about. And then have Reinforced Constructs, that it's a spell that has a casting value of 5+, a range of 18 inch, and is successfully cast, pick one friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within the range, so 18 inch, and visible to the caster until your next hero phase. The unit has a ward of 4+, but only against mortal wounds. And remember such thing, so that it's nice, but you have to go against something that bring you mortal wounds. Otherwise, it's useless. So you have to decide if it's worth for you to have or not. Still, maybe it could be a good protection way, and so you have to think about eventually. Because remember that you have anyway a base word that you can amplify. So you have to think if it's good to have one specific one against the mortal wounds to cast on a specific unit and use the command points for other units eventually, so to seal this way some command points, and it's up to you decide how you want to choose such options. And then we have Drain Vitality. This is a spell that we've seen also in the previous Battletome, but it changed and I think it's even better now. So this is a spell that has casting value of 6 and a range of 18 inch. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. Until your next hero phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit. It means all attacks, so ranged one and melee ones, and subtract 1 from save rolls for attacks that target that unit. So this is even double, as it's really quite intriguing. So it's something that you should really think about gaining, because it can make that you can have that the unit save less and you can even be hit less. So quite nice. And then we have Mortal Contract. This is one of my favorite spells about the Ossiarch Bonereapers. I even made the physical version of such spell, because this is something that it stay in game. So it's even better in some way than endless spells. So this is a spell that has casting value of 7 and a range of 18 inch. Is successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. For the rest of the battle, roll a dice at the end of each phase in which any attack made by that unit inflicted any damage to a friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit. On a 3+, anyway, you have to throw battle. It's not a problem, because technically you can roll a die for each phase in which an attack made damages, and that enemy suffer D3 mortal wounds. You cannot pick the same unit to be affected by this spell more than once per battle, but anyway you can pick other units. So it's quite nice, and I like such spell a lot, because it means that technically you could have even 6 units if the opponent start that can be suffering each time that try to make damages to you. So it's something that I like a lot, and it's one of my first choices about the spells. Not the best, but still I like quite a lot as spell, and it's something that I like to play with. And then we have Soul Release. This is a spell that has a casting value of 5, is successfully cast until your next hero phase. Enemy reserve unit and enemy summon unit cannot be set up within 12 inch of the caster. The range of this spell must be measured from the caster, even if an ability will allow you to measure it from elsewhere. So this is really quite intriguing, because you create a sort of null zone of arrive, and you can be really quite intrigued with the ones that summon units, for example, for the Sobragavers or so on. So this is really quite intriguing to preserve, so that you can, for example, forbid the control of objectives and so on. That can be done with summoned units. So it can be really quite interesting to prevent some bashes. So I like quite a lot. And then we can begin to talk about the subfactions, so the alliances of the sub-alliances of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and we had to notice some things compared to the previous button. There have disappeared the specific command ability, the specific artifact, and the specific command trait. Still, I find them really quite good, because there's been really nice changes, and you have more freedom to personalize your armies. Moreover, as we have seen, a lot of the ones that were specific abilities of command abilities of the alliances are now available for all the units, so you don't have such problems, and I think that it's more versatile as option, so it's quite nice. And then we can begin with the Mortis Praetorians. This has an ability that is Dread Legion, that makes that once per turn, during the enemy charge phase, after an enemy unit finish a charge move, you can pick one friendly Mortis Praetorian unit within 12 inch of that enemy unit and more than 3 inch from all enemy units, so it does not be yet in close combat obviously. That unit can attempt a charge. This is quite intriguing because you can associate this, for example, with the Counter-Strike or, for example, with the unflinching coordination. So you can make that this can make quite a lot of a sort of trap. So the enemy has always to think, if you are going to play with the Mortis Praetorians, where and when you go to make charges. Because, okay, it's only once per turn, but it means that you can anyway do. So he has to pay quite a lot of attention and could be really quite nice to play with. It's quite strategically about such type of ability. And then we had the Legion Petrifex Elites with Unstoppable Juggernaut that subtract 1 from the damage inflicted to a minimum of 1 by each successful attack that targets a friendly Petrifex Elite Hecatos, so a lot of units has the Hecatos in keyword, or Petrifex Elite Gothiza Avester, so it makes these monsters even more resilient and it's quite nice. Remember that it becomes from 2 to 1, but 1 can't become 0, so pay attention about such. And if you think about, you can coordinate this with a lot of options. For example, think about impenetrable ranks, so that you decrease the damage that you receive, and you save with a modified 5+ the word such damages. So it can reduce quite a lot the, I can say, substantial damage that you can suffer. So it's quite nice. It's not as amazing as was before, but it remains an amazing one to have such legion to use. And then we had the Ygnimortoi Lord Legion. Here they have the ability Ygnimortoi that make you reroll the charge rules for friendly Ygnimortoi Lords unit that have a mount. Here you could be disappointed that they have to have the mount, but remember that the Mortisan Sunmason, the Lich Cavalos and the Cavalos Death Riders have all the mount, and the Ygnimortoi Lords are all mounted technically as background, so it's perfect suited this one. And you have also to remember that technically if you want to reroll the charges, you have to spend command abilities. Instead here you have free ones. So it's not bad if you think the amount of saving that you have about command points. Moreover, you have also to remember that you have the reform ranks that make you the ability to make that you can retreat and then charge again in the same turn. So it's not bad. It's like having back the old Ossiarch Lords one legion of the old Battletome, so it's not bad at all, and it's quite suited because you can really bring up quite a lot of damage, charging and so on, so it's nice, believe me. So it's better than you could think at the first sight. And then had the Ivory Host Legion. This is quite intriguing, but you have to pay attention because it has a ability Summoning Rage that add 1 to the number of hit scored by the Nadrit Weapon Battle trait. So it means that if you make the 6 on a modified roll with an Ivory Host unit, you make 3 hits instead of 2, but you had to have suffered before on that specific unit wounds or mortal wounds, so you had to be damaged in some way before to be able to do such. But you have also to remember that the ability of such one is not affected by the Empire Ruler Nadrit Weapons spell, so it means that you can make on a 5+ the 2 hits, but to have the 3 hits, so activate if you suffer the wounds or mortal wounds, this Summoning Rage active, you have to make anyway a 6 to make the 3 hits, so you have to pay attention. This is not so great, but not so bad. It can be sure give you quite a lot of amount of attacks if you are able to make the right decision of how to make this ability work on. But still, it's a bit problematic, still quite nice, because it's quite characteristic, such Legion, so quite nice. And I've had the Null Myriad Legion, one of my favorites. I prefer another one, but I like such one, that has the ability Eldritch Nuns, that it's quite similar to the previous Battletome one, that makes it that you can roll a dice each time a friendly Null Myriad unit wholly within 9 inches of any friendly Null Myriad Mortisan or friendly Archon is affected by a spell cast by an enemy unit or the abilities of another spells summoned by an enemy unit. So not the ones that are your ones about the spells, so you have to pay attention. Remember that you count the range, so that you have to be wholly within the Mortisan, so the Mortisan are essential to be able to use such ability. And remember that on a 2+, ignore the effect of that spell or the effects of the end spell's abilities on. And because it says that affected, it means that even the spells that doesn't target you directly but affect you, so for example the target a shining future around you and you enter in that range and so you are affected, these apply and you ignore, so it's quite amazing. And be able to ignore, for example, the Jaws, the Purple Sun or so on, it's not bad. Okay, it's only 2+, but it's a 2+, so it's quite sure to be able to avoid such effect. So against magic armies, it's an amazing legion to play with. And I had my favorite legion, that are the crematorians in Ygnimortoi. Remember that in the description you can find my playlist about the modifying the themed army of crematorians, my one, so eventually if you're interested you can find, and also some things that could be about the abilities or so on, so specific about how to create a personalization of your own army for the crematorians or inspire you for other things. And their ability is immolation as in the previous battle, but improved because each time a friendly crematorians mod is slain, before removing that mod from play, you can pick one enemy unit within 3 inches of it, so in close combat, and roll a number of dice equal to the wounds characteristic of that mod. So it's not one as before, aside from the number of wounds that that model had, but for the number of wounds, so it can be really quite awesome. And for each 5+, that enemy unit suffer 1 mortal wound. So it's similar to the ones that we have seen, for example, for the stomach Satanas, but it's amazing. Moreover, if you think that you have option to recover the models or heal the unit, think about the abilities, the heroic options, and for example the Bone Shaper, or think also about the Goddess Harvester, that this time become really quite more awesome applied to this, because it makes that you can return each time models continuously, because it has also an improved range to use, and so it's really quite amazing one. Remember that you can create quite a lot of cooperation of the units to make that you can be killed, attacked, resurrected, and still make again damages. So it's amazing, this one. I love such army because it has a background that I'm fully in love for it, so it's fantastic. I sincerely suggest you to try at least, but I think that it will be a mainstream army. Still, I love such one, and I'm glad to have yet a complete army prepared for such legion, because it's something that I completely love in as personalization, characterizing, and everything about such army. Then we had the specific grand strategies for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Here I can say that you'll always use the first one, because it's as it was, because it's the same in the previous Battletome, the main one to use, because you need such one. And it's the skill balance, that when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if any friendly Mortar Guard or Cavalus Deferider units from your starting army have the same number of mod as they had at the start of battle. And it's quite easy to heal a unit to make it come back to full size, so I think that it's the easiest to take as a grand strategy. But there are also other 3 available. The first one is the Test Boot Conquest, that when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you control all the objectives on the battlefield. It's quite difficult to do this one, so I don't think that many will choose this. Then we have creation and termination, that when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are more friendly Mortisan than the enemy heroes on the battlefield. Here it's quite problematic. If you play, for example, in Myriad, so you need a lot of Mortisan, or anyway an army mainly related about the Mortisans, could be useful if you are able to kill in the way that the enemy heroes are less than your Mortisans, but it's not so simple, so it's not the best, I think, to choose, and so you have really to think how many Mortisans you are going to kill for your army. Then you have the Pride of Ossia, that when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you completed at least 4 battle tactics, and every battle tactic you completed this battle was from the flawless execution list that we see right now. This it's even the most problematic because you don't anyway have to think about the normal battle tactics, but only because all the ones has to be from the flawless execution ones, so the specific about the Ossiarch Bonereapers. You have to make at least 4, so you have to play at least 4 battle rounds. And so it's the most difficult to realize, because it's even easier to make the one that you control all the objectives. It's easier, that one. So I don't think that this one will be quite used, because it's the most problematic of all the grand strategies of the Ossiarch Bonereapers to choose, and I don't think that it will be really used. And then we had the battle tactics specific only for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. The first one is Trample the Defiant. Pick one friendly Kavros Death Rider unit that is more than 3 inches from all enemy units. You complete this tactic if that unit made a charge move in this turn and it's within 3 inches of any enemy unit at the end of the turn. This was also previously available, and it's simple to realize, so it's not a particular problem. Obviously, you have to pay attention about the amount of damage that you do to the opponent unit. Then you had the Sculptor's Entourage. You complete this tactic at the end of this turn if a friendly Immortis card, pay attention, and the friendly Mortisan are contesting the same objective wholly outside of your territory. This it's not simple, because first of all you have to use the Immortis card, not a problem because it's quite nice as unit, but you have to have the Immortis card and a Mortisan both on the same objective and wholly outside your territory, so not defensive one. So it's quite problematic. It's not so difficult, but it's something that you have to find yourself in the way that it's easy to do such one. Then you have Remorseless Bombardment. Pick one enemy unit on the battlefield. You complete this tactic if that enemy unit is destroyed during this turn by attacks made by friendly Mortar Clovers unit. First of all, so to do such, you have to have Mortar Clovers in your army. You should have such ones, and I suggested that you had 2 of them, so if you plan at least to have this battle tactic available. And you have also to pay attention about the amount that you can do. So think about using on dying enemy units, so that they are really close to die, and so you can finish them. Eventually make that all the Mortar Clovers fire on it, because otherwise it could be problematic, but still available as a thing, it's not quite a problem. Then we have the tight demands. Pick one enemy hero or monster on the battlefield. You complete this tactic if that unit is destroyed during this turn by an attack made by a friendly Ghost Harvester. Obviously you have to have a Ghost Harvester, otherwise this is not usable. And you have also to remember that you have to kill a hero or a monster with a Ghost Harvester, so it's not so simple, but it's not so difficult, so quite nice. Also this one we have seen previously, but it's I can say a bit problematic, but you can do. Then you have the Edge of Obliteration, that makes that you complete this tactic if 2 or more Necropolis Stalker units are wholly within enemy territory and more than 9 inches from all enemy units at the end of this turn. This it's I don't know, because you have to have 2 units that are quite fast in moving and so on, that are to be wholly within the enemy territory and out far from the enemy units, and that to be true. It's not so simple because these units tend to be in close combat, so they should not be outside to make points. So it's usable, but it's not so great, this one. Then we have unfilling the cushion that you complete this tactic if there are 3 or more Ossiarch Bonereapers units on the battlefield that had model return to them using the command right-click construct and did not have any model slain in this turn. So this it's a way to cure, so it's not problematic because if you think about you make that you keep them outside, for example heroes, Mortisan, so on, that you need to heal for some reason, and so it's not so problematic. But you have to have 3 to do such, so you have to prepare to use 3 command points to be able to do the 3 right-click constructs, and moreover you have to make that there are 3 that are you sure that they damage the opponent but they are not damaged. So it's not so problematic, but you have to pay a bit of attention. Still, they are quite nice, these battle tactics, but you have to remember that you have some clauses, some things that you have to remember, because you have to have eventually the Cavalrous Riders, or the Mortisan, or the Mortar Crewers, or the Gothic Harvester, or the Necropolis Stalkers. So there are some units that are specifically required to be able to do such battle tactics. So you have to pay attention about such, and they're nice, but eventually think also about the normal ones, because they can help you much better sometimes. So be useful about those ones that are available when you need and you can afford to make such ones. About specific battalion for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, we have only one, that is Ossiarch Cohort, that it consists in minimum the Liege Cavalrous and 2 Mortar Guards, but you can add eventually up to 2 Soul Reaper, other 3 Mortar Guard, 2 Gothic Harvester, and 2 Mortar Crawler. The benefit is unified, so you may have the 1 drop, and it has also another rule that adds that at the end of the deployment, each unit in this battalion must be set up within 6 inches of 2 or more units in the same battalion. That could be interesting, but even not so much, since it's a malus more than a bonus. And really, if I had to choose, I prefer not to use such one, because it's useless. Okay, I have the 1 drop, but sincerely I prefer to use some battalion that make me gain some enhancement, some option about having some command ability, gain it for free and so on. Not such thing. This is completely useless. Having this and not having, it's the same, because I have anyway the option about the general ones to have a single drop. So this is useless completely. This is really something that even if there isn't, I don't lost anything. And it's a pity, because I hoped that they would have something that it was at least comparable to what we've seen in the AoS Coach Battalion in the previous Battletome. Instead, these are something that you can simply forget. About Nagash, we can say that it's quite solid as chart. It costs a lot, but it's quite solid. It's 18 wounds with a save of 3 plus without any improvement. It's really amazing as it is. The wounds table is really quite impressive, so much that if it's clean, it can cast 8 spell. Obviously, it's a wizard with the number of spells that this unit can attempt to cast in your hero phase is determined using the 9 books of Nagash ability, and this unit can attempt to unbind any number of spells if the enemy hero fails any number of spells, so it doesn't have a limit. If this unit is part of an 8-count Flesh Eater Curse, Ossiarch Bonereapers or Soulblight Graveyard army, it knows all the spells for the spell lore that the faction has abilities, in addition to the other spells it knows. So it's not all, technically. You can really make a choose about what you can cast. Obviously, played in that army, not also the armies that it's not playing it. It's a War Master, so this unit can be included in an account of Flesh Eater Curse, Ossiarch Bonereapers, also Blood Graveyard army, and if it is treated as a general, even if it is not a model pick to be the army's general. It's obvious, it's Nagash, it's command all. In addition, you can still use the army's alliance abilities even if this unit is not from the army's faction. However, this unit does not benefit from them, so it's quite nice. It has fly. It has a companion that this unit is accompanied by all spirits armed with spectral claws and dagger. That is the speed that you see in the mod itself. It has Alaknash, the Staff of Power, that add 3 to casting and bind and dispel rolls for this unit. Always, it doesn't change based on the wound that is suffered. Quite amazing. It has Invocation of Nagash at the start of your hero phase. For each friendly summonable Mordant or Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within range of this unit, you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if no wounds has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain model to it that has a combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. The range is represented in the schedule up here, so it's quite awesome. Then we have Mortisan, friendly death unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit has a word save of 5+. Not so great, not bad. Then we have Supreme Lord of the Undead. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick up 1 friendly summonable Mordant or Ossiarch Bonereapers unit with a wound characteristic of 3 or less that has been destroyed and on roll and dice. On a 3+, a new replacement unit with half of the model from that unit that was destroyed, rounded up, is added to your army. The replacement unit must be set up wholly within 12 inch of this unit and more than 9 inch from all enemy units. Units set up in this way cannot move in the following moving phase. Each extra unit can only be replaced 1 replacement, and unit cannot themselves be replaced. But it means that in a way you can try eventually to charge. So it's really quite amazing because it can keep 1 unit and make it come back. So any unit on 3+, it's amazing this one because wow, it's really something amazing. And then we had the 9 books of Nagash. The number of spell, as I said, that the content is shown up, but I can say that 8 spell it's not bad. Hand of Dust is a spell that has a casting value of 8 and a range of 3. It starts to the cast, pick 1 enemy model within range and visible to the caster. Then take a dice and hide it in one of your hands or under one of the appropriate container and so on. If they pick the one holding the dice, the spell has no effect. If they pick the empty hand or container, the enemy model is slain. So it has 50% of possibility to make. Sincerely, I don't like such thing. I prefer to roll a dice than to make such game, but it's a sort of classic about Nagash, such spell. Then we have Soul Stealer, that is a spell that has casting value of 7 and a range of 24 inch. It starts to recast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffer D3 mortal wounds if the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not bound. That unit suffer D6 mortal wound instead of D3. You can heal up to 1 wound that has been allocated to the caster for each mortal wound caused by this spell that is not negated. So it's really quite nice, but you have to have some consideration. The Hand of Dust, I don't think that it will be improved, for example, with the ability of Arcan. So here, I think that it will be soon released a fact about that it has the 3 inch, because to be within 3 inch, Nagash has to be in close combat. If you amplify such, it means that the Nagash technically could try to kill model like this without being in close combat. So I think that there will be such a limitation. So, and remember that about Soul Stealer, you can't heal if the opponent model is able to have a ward that prevent that wound. So pay attention about such. Still, Nagash, it's quite massive. I don't like to play Nagash as itself. I have painted and I made a video about Nagash because I love the model. I use a lot of time to be able to monetize and paint this model. It's wonderful. Still, I don't like to play on the table because, so, in my opinion, it's really too big. It's a divinity. I have to play with some narrative or some peculiar, some big games about Age of Sigmar to be able to really bring up such model on the battlefield. But obviously, it's my opinion about. Then we have Catacos. This is a model with 20 wounds and movement for 63 plus, so identical in this way about the old version, but the profile is much better because the damage table is more solid as it is and more complicated. It's easier to follow in such a way, so much better. And it has quite a lot of rules. It has War Master, so if this unit is included in a Mortis Praetorian army, it is treated as general, even if it is not the model picked to be the army's general. Quite nice. As companion, it's accompanied by the personal guard armed with retinue blades. So remember that you have the attacks that here are the ones that follow the battle trade netherite weapons. So it's quite amazing because it means quite a lot of attacks that apply a nice battle rules. So we have the companions of this model that make that are the Prime Nephoros, so that once per turn this unit can use a command to a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper anywhere on the battlefield without a command point being spent. Without a command point being spent everywhere on the battlefield. So quite amazing. Then we have Gnosis Skullbearer. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick one enemy unit on the battlefield, again on the battlefield, until your next hero phase. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit that attack a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit. It's like having Drain Vitality applied everywhere on the battlefield. Okay, welcome. Then we have Ossiarch Spymaster. Once per turn, you can roll a dice when your opponent receives a command point. If you do so, on a 5+, that command point is lost. Okay, once and on 5+, so it's not sure, but still it's a nice option. Then we have Do Nothing. This one is mine. So use the bottom row of this unit damage table when it is within 3 inches of enemy heroes. So it means that it has the most attack available. So I think that it's quite welcome too. And then we have Mortiarch of the Necropolis. So in your hero phase, you can pick up to 3 friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper units wholly within 24 inches. And if this unit is not an Immortal's Guard or Necropolis Stalker, you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if not wound has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain models to it that has combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. Remember, full models, no half wound models, so all models has to be full as option as wound. Then, if that unit is an Immortis Guard or a Necropolis Stalker unit, you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if not wound has been allocated to that unit, roll a dice and on a 3+, you can return 1 slain model to that unit. So it's quite amazing because this, together with Arcan and the Bone Shaper, is the only ways to replenish the models of the Mortis Guard and the Necropolis Stalker. It means be able to replenish some amazing units, quite intriguing. Then we have Endless Duty, so that you can use this command ability in your hero phase. The unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit until your next hero phase. Add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit melee weapons. This is amazing. It's the same ability of the Liege Cavalos, but remember the other command ability that it has, that is Supreme Lord of the Bonereapers Legions, so that you can use this command ability in your hero phase. So, or this or the Endless Duty. You can't do both of them with Catacross. If this unit is more than 3 inches from all enemy units, this unit must receive the command. Until your next hero phase, add 1 to hit roll for all attacks made by friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within 24 inches of this unit, and add 1 to the save rolls for attacks that target friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within 24 inches of this unit. This is really quite amazing. So, but remember that if you are going to target the Mortal Guard, pay attention because Durcius walls could not be integrated quite well with this one because it's a bonus and they can't benefit from such bonus eventually. But if you are not going to apply that, it's nice because it's something that make that you can add hit rolls and you can have really quite a lot. You can give penalties to damage hit rolls, gain your ones. So this is really quite versatile as mod and really quite awesome to think about because it gives you quite a lot. So this is really the leader of the Ossiarch Bonereapers and it say and confirm such thing. And then we have Arcan the Black. Here we can see that the profile is changed a bit and it's more solid in close combat because the amount of wound moved from 11 to 14 and the save from 4 plus to 3 plus. So it has more wounds, 3 more wounds, and a better armor save, so it's quite nice. Moreover, if you go to see about the ratio about the wound suffers and the profiles, it has much better now. And also about the damage, technically it makes more solid damage now, even if technically it's still the same. Anyway, about the rules, it has always the rule about being a wizard and it can attempt to cast 3 spells in your hero phase and attempt to dispel 3 spells in the enemy hero phase. If this unit is part of the Ossiarch Bonereapers army, it knows all the spells, so you don't have to select, but you know all the spells about the lore of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and this is in addition to the other spells that he knows. So that means that the ones that he knows for sure it has, so it's something that I quite like. And it has the title of War Master, so if this unit is included in an army of Ossiarch Bonereapers, it is treated as general even if it is not the model picked to be the army's general. So it means that you can gain 2 generals for your army, and so it improves also the range about the command ability and so on. It's always useful. It has the rules obviously of flying, and it has a mount and a companion. I like such distinction about the 2 because before it was all mounts, instead now it has the distinction and can be quite useful in the future about eventual rules that can affect such model. So the mount is the Trader Beast Razornak. It has armed with the airborne claws. Instead we have to remember that the companions are the spirits with the claws and daggers. Then we have to remember that it has Fistler of Swords, that it's improved too, because before it was limited to 2 wounds, instead now it can be to amount of 6, so it's really much better now. It's much similar to what you would expect from a vampire more than an Ossiarch, but I like such one. The Staff of Spirit, it's the one that add the Staff of Spirit value shown to this unit damage table to casting, dispelling, and the binding rolls for this unit, so you have the bonus thanks to this. You have First of the Mortex that add 6 to the range spell by Friendly Death Wizard where there are wholly within 18 inch of this unit, and this it's quite much better than before, because before you had to make this using a command ability, so it's much better now because you don't have to use a command ability to activate this, so nice. Then in your phase you can pick with the rule Mortech of Sacrament up to 3 different friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit wholly within 28 inch if that unit is not a Immortis Guard or a Necropolis Stalker. And I want to remember you that those units have seen an improve of profile, so it's something that you have to remember about this, because you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to the unit, or if no wounds was been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain models to it that has a combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. So it's nice because it's like having the equivalent of 3 Bonereapers that give you the effect. But if that unit, and this is new, is an Immortal Guard or a Necropolis Stalker, you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to the unit, as usual, as it's not a problem, but if no wounds has been allocated to that unit, roll a dice on a 3 plus, you can return 1 slain model to that unit. And it's important this one, because one of such models has 5 wounds, and be able to bring back completely a model, it's not bad. And it's like having, I can say with the new rules about the rally, having a sort of 1 dice for sure roll for the success about the rally. So it's quite important because it's not a command ability, it's something that you do freely. So here you can improve quite a lot the possibility to bring up the Necropolis Stalker, because before it was almost impossible to bring back live in undead living, a model of the Mortis Guard or Necropolis Took, and it had even less wounds than now. Then we had the classical Curse of the Year, so that is a spell with a casting value of 6 and a range of 18 inch, but remember that you apply also the rule about the Fist of Mortarch, so it means that you can be with 24 inch because you add 6 inch to itself. And so it starts to recast, pick an enemy unit within range and visible to the caster and roll 10 dice. For each 6 that unit suffer 1 mortal wounds, and you can roll another dice for each 5+, and so on. So you can continue to roll, but remember that there are 2 things that you have to remember. This can be interrupted by saving that mortal wound. So if you roll, for example, 1 single dice and that one is saved by the opponent, this interrupts this chain, and the one it's always a failing. So even if you reach that, technically it should be complete with 1. It's anyway that the one is still failing. So you still have to complete every time roll the dice. Otherwise, if you roll a 1, it's ended the spell. This is a sort of double edge. It could be really quite amazing or really quite useless, because anyway all depends about the dice. Once that you reach the profile, so that 3, 2+, it's much better, but it's quite easy that it's interrupted before. So it's something that potentially could even blast out a unit, but otherwise it's not so sure, so pay attention about such detail. Then we have the Archcavallos Xanthos, that it's a special target of the Mortis Praetorians. This has seen quite a lot of changes. The movement has been brought down from 12 inch to 10 inch, and the amount of attacks has been changed, but in a positive way, because it has lost, yes, an attack from the shield, but it has gained 2 attacks from the Dark Lance, and it's much more welcome in such way. Then we can see about the rules. It has War Master, so if this unit is included in the Mortis Praetorians army, it is treated as general, even if it is not the model picked to be the army's general, and I think that it's nice. It has having bonuses in anyway the range of the command abilities. We have that it has obviously the mount. It has Will of the Legions. So once per turn, this unit can use a command to a friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit without a command being spent. This is really quite useful, because it means to save each turn, if you include obviously this model, a command point. So it's like generating a free command point, and so I think that it's really quite nice. Then we have Unstoppable Charge. After this unit makes a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the modified charge roll for that charge move. For each 5+, that enemy unit suffer 1 mortal wound. In addition, this unit can move an extra 3 inch when it Palin made a charge move in the same turn. So this is quite useful if you combine this, for example, with reform ranks, so that you can retreat and charge again in the same turn. So it has a lot of potential, this one. It has Dark Lance, so add 1 to the damage characteristic of this Dark Lance, so the attacks of the rider itself, the Xanthos itself, if this unit made a charge move in this same turn. So it becomes to having 3 damage with the lance for 5 attacks, I quite like. And then it has an important change, because it has lost Endless Duty as option, but you have to remember that eventually, if you go to play Catacos with this, Catacos can give the same effect on an important range. So this is more important, the one that lasted on such mode, that it's still their breath, so that you can use this command ability in the combat phase. This unit must receive the command until your next hero phase. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapon for friendly Mortis Praetorians units while there are wholly within 12 inch of this unit. So it means that it casts on itself to give bonus on a range. So it's really quite an important one, this rule, because it means that you can really create an aura of potential and make the Ossiarch Bonereapers units gain a lot in wounding the enemy. So I think that I like quite a lot of such thing. The real problem is that it's only related about the Mortis Praetorians, so you have to remember such technical limitation if you're not going to use the Legion Mortis Praetorians. Otherwise, you have really to think about trying to include this in your army, because it's a good add and it can give you a really intriguing bonus to your army itself. Then you have Bookmortem, Master of the Bontide, that is another special character of the Mortis Praetorians. This is a model that has an amazing background, and believe me, in Broken Realms it even mocked gods themselves, so quite amazing. It has had a little change about the profile, so the profile has seen the save previously one of 5+ improved to 4+, I quite like, and the damage more stabilized because it's 2 fixed instead of being D3. But what I like more, it's about the abilities. It's a wizard, so it can attempt to cast 2 spells in the hero phase and unbind 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. And if this is part of an Ossiarch Bonereapers army, it knows all the spells of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, so you don't have to choose, and I like quite a lot. It's similar to Arcane in this way. Then you have that it has Contract of Nuggets, so at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 3 inches, so it has to be in close combat, of the unit, and roll a dice. On a 3+, your opponent must spend a command point to pick this unit to be target of the enemy unit's attack at that phase. So to attack, if you are able to roll a 3+, the enemy has to spend an important resource like a command ability to be able to attack such model. And believe me, when you see its spell that read soon, you see that this is crazy, because it has also Green Warning that it makes that subtract 2 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units while they are within 12 inches of this unit, and if the model picked to be the enemy general has been slain, subtract 3 from the bravery characteristic instead of 2. So it's really quite useful, moreover, if you are able to make the battleship test to the opponent. Moreover, if you combine, for example, with artifacts or, for example, the end spell that make you able, the bonus type shaker, that make you able to make that they can't use the inspiring presence, so quite nice. But what is crazy about such model is the spell, as I said, because it has a spell that has a casting value of 7 and a range of 1, and before that you try to think about the combination with Arcane, it can't be expanded such 1 inch, so it's remain 1 inch. So if successfully cast, pick one enemy model within range invisible to the caster. On a 4+, the model is slain. It's slain. It's amazing if you think about it. And okay, there are some models that have some rules that forbid that they have been slain completely immediately, but not a lot. So technically you can slay an amazing model without any trouble at all. So this technically can instant kill anyone. So with a 3+, you can forbid the enemy to attack you other than spending a command point. So if you are able to make the opponent spend all the command point before that the combat phase is up, you are quite good if you are able to make the 3+. So it's some things that you have to do. Eventually you can combine also with Canyon and so on to gain other options to prevent to be damaged. You can also remember about having, for example, the ability about the impenetrable ranks to improve its ward eventually to improve again. But still, this is something that it's a model that if you play the Mortis Praetorians, it's a really image that you can think to include, because it has quite nice options that can be really lethal for your opponent. And then we had the Mortisan Ossiarch. This is the only new model released with this new Battletome of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Technically, the model is technically a Boneshaper, but adapted to adjust with the elite part of the constructs. So much that in the miniature you can see that it has a shoulder pads of the Morgas to adjusting. This is a wizard that can attempt to cast one spell in your hero phase and attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase, even if you can yet start to think that you always use its own spell. So it has refined creation. In your hero phase, you can pick one friendly God's Harvester, Mortal Cohort, or Morghast unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit and pick one of the following augmentation to apply to that unit until your next hero phase. The same unit cannot be picked to benefit from this ability more than once per turn. The augmentation are ossified parts, improve the range characteristic of that melee weapons by 1, not bad at all. Accelerated calcification, the first wound or mortal wound caused by that unit in each phase is negated. And enhanced close spawn. If the modified hit roll for an attack made with missile weapon by that unit is 6, this attack score 2 hits to the target instead of 1. Make wound rolls and save rolls for each hit. So this is like having the ability of the weapons, the Neferite weapons, applied to the missile weapons, and you can apply to both the God Service, because has missile weapons, and to the Mortal Crew. And about the Mortal Crew, when you see the profile of the Mortal Crew new one, you understand that this is quite amazing. You can really enforce crazily that one. But what is important is the spell. Empower Ossification is a spell that has a casting value of 5 and a range of 24 inch. It starts to recast, the caster can pick up to 3 different friendly Goddess Harvester, Mortal Crow or Morgas unit in any combination that are wholly within range, so 24 inch, to benefit from the refined creations ability instead of one that is wholly within 12 inch. And this is really quite important because the real downside of such model is the range. Wholly within 12 inch, it's quite small. Moreover, if you think that Morgas are really quite fast, the Gods Harvester tend to go to close combat. And if you move quite a lot, you risk about the options that you have about having the Mortal Crews. But you have also eventually the artifact that is specific for this that eventually can make you think about going closer to the unit, but you risk to leave the Mortal Crews behind. So this can suppress such limitations. So this is quite nice. Sincerely, if you are going to include not so much as the Goddess Harvester, even if they can benefit quite a lot, but the Morgas, but moreover the Mortal Crew, this is something that is a must-have. At least one, even if you have 2 Mortal Crew, because with the spell you can suppress the problem about not being able to use the ability, for example, of the Lich Covers that has been modified, so it doesn't work anymore on the Mortal Crew themselves. So this is much better that you can think at the first sight. And I've had the Mortisan Bushship, that is one of my other favorite models about the Ossiarch Bonereapers. As profile, it's the same that we've seen in the previous Battletome, other than the melee weapons that are the same than the Mortisan Soul Reaper. And it's funny about this. Anyway, it's still a wizard that you can cast one spell in your own hero phase and combine one spell in the enemy hero phase. What is important is the ability Bone Shaper. Previously, I have said true about Arcan that it's equivalent to 3 Bone Shaper, because it's yes, so, but only if they are normal models, but we see now. In your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit within 6 inch of this unit. If that unit is not an Immortis Guard or a Necropolis Stalker, you can either heal up 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if not, wound has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain models to it that have a combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. So remember that anyway, they have to be complete wound models. So if you have, for example, a mod that has 2 wounds, you can't make it come back 1.5, only 1 anyway. So Mortal Guard 3 and 1 covers the Riders. But if that unit is an Immortis Guard or a Necropolis Stalker unit, you can either heal up 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if no wound had been allocated to that unit, roll a dice. On a 3+, you can return 1 slain mod to that unit. This is quite important because now the Immortis Guard and Necropolis Stalkers has 5 wound each. So it's quite important. On a 3+ you can replenish. And if you think that you can have to this Mortisan Boneshaper the Artisan's Key that make that you can use this ability twice, technically you can make for one mod on a 3+, make apply so, in the way that you can make come back 2 times this one, or one mod each unit, again rolling a 3+, or make that one unit replenish till 2 models, so like having a rally on that unit, so, and even better than one rally. So it's really a way to replenish the models of your unit, and if you have 2 Bonereapers are better than one single Archon if your target are the Necroblade or the Mortis Guard. So I think that it has a lot of potential anyway. Then it has a spell that it's Storm, that it's a spell that has a casting value of 5 and a range of 18 inch. It's actually cast pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster and roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in that unit. So more models that are in that unit, more dice you roll, and for each 5+, the unit suffer 1 mortal wound. So it's not bad, really, because anyway, it's a way to make some... It's a sort of little version of Archon in some way, but no, because Archon can gain more with its Curse of the Year. But still, it's quite nice as model and the various option, and it's a way to replenish your ranks about your models of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And now we had the Mortisan Sulmason, a model that it in some way improved quite a lot the way that to be used, but it changed completely the way that you used this model compared to before. It has seen an improvement about the save from 5+ to 4+, fixing about the damage to 2 instead of D3 about the random damage. And what is changed? It's about that. It's a wizard that can cast still 2 spells in your own hero phase and combine 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. But if this mod is part of an Ossiarch Bonereapers, it knows all the spell of the lore of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And it's quite intriguing because it means that it's similar to Archon, because it knows all the spells. And it means that it can adapt to what you need without having to think what you need to select for that model. So it's nice that the chair has become a mount. It was predictable, this thing. The Mortar Throne is the same as effect, so at the end of your hero phase, roll a dice for this unit. On 1, nothing happens. To 2 to 5, this unit can immediately attempt to cast the Soul Guide, that is the specific spell that we see now. And even if the cast attempt has already been made for that spell in that phase, on a 6, this unit can immediately attempt to cast Soul Guide D3 time, even if an attempt has already been made for the spell in that phase. Here it's quite important because it means that you can concentrate your spells to cast what you need from the lore of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and at the same time, then you can have for free casting the Soul Guide. About the Soul Guide, I made a specific incarnation about these spells so that I could use eventually for more units, but now it's limited about the unit that you can select, because it's what has changed that it's really important. So now the spell works completely different. Now you can't anymore think about improve the Mortal Cruise, for example. So this is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 24 inch. It's actually cast pick one friendly Mortar Guard or Cowls the Writer unit wholly within range and visible to the caster. Add 1 wound to this unit made to this attack made with melee weapons until your next hero phase. So it's quite intriguing because it's a way to improve the wound options about the units, but it's only deferred about the Mortar Guard and the Cowls the Rider. So it's really welcome because it's perfectly welcome. It's still essential, but it has completely changed to before that. Before it made reroll the dice about the hit and so on. So it's completely redoing how you had to perceive such one. Sincerely, when I read at the first time, I thought that it was almost useless because changing in that way, so only about the Mortec and the Cavalos, the Fridays, it was like limiting a lot its specific role. But thinking better about such, if you think that it can have its spells that you can use as you need, and then having such options, it means that you can control better eventually the battlefield. So you can even think that one for sure is to be used, because I think that it's one of the wizards that you had to include in your army. But you can even think about 2 of them, because you can really control better the battlefield with the magic. So it's something that I think has potential at the end. Eventually, you have to think about having armies, if you think about include more than one of these, that are mainly calibrated and concentrated about having mortar guard and covers riders than other units. So you have to think about how you want to compose your army to use these models inside. And then we have the Mortisan Reaper. This is a model that has a beautiful miniature but problems with the profile. The generic profile is the same. It improved the range of the attacks, so now it's -2 instead of the previously -1. It's still a wizard that so make that he can cast one spell in your hero phase and attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase. The problem is that has lost Deathly Touch, so it doesn't do any more mortal wounds eventually with the attacks. And then we had the rule So Rip that each time this unit fight, you can say that it will unleash a Reaping Strike. If you do so, add 2 to the attack characteristic of this unit melee weapon until the end of the phase. But this unit can do only target units that have 5 or more models, so it's not so good against units like heroes, and it doesn't have so many wounds that it can really battle successfully against units that has quite a lot of power about the numbers, but it's this that make it so unusable. So we had the spell that it's improved, this one, and it's South Blast that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12 inch. And remember that with Arcane at least it becomes 18. So it starts to recast at the start of any one phase before your next hero phase. You can pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and if that unit is within 3 inches, so in close combat with the caster, that unit suffers 3 mortal wounds instead of 3. So it's like having an Arcane Missile, technically, a similar sort. The real problem is that to unleash the full potential, it has 3 inches, so it's in close combat. Nice, but not so nice. And anyway, the range otherwise that you have Arcane in your rooster, it's not so great because it's 12 inches to do D3 mortal wounds eventually. This is a model that really, or it's really cheap, so that you include because you had to spend some of the points in your rooster and you don't have any other choices, or you need some number of Mortisan and it's cheap, or there are not real option to take this because it doesn't have something that it makes really enjoyable to play with other than immunity. And then had the Mortar Guard. This unit has seen quite a lot of change about the weapon profiles, that has seen that the spear finally has a rand that it should have had from the beginning. The hit has decreased in power, so from 3 plus has now a 4 plus. But remember that you have the option that you can gain the range. So it's better about the blade if you have few models, but if you have bigger units, I think that it's still better the spear because it lets you have more mod that can attack. And there are a lot of ways to improve the hit about the models, so it's quite easy, I think. Also, the Soul Cleaver Grid Blade has seen a change of the damage that now it's 2 instead of 1. It's something that it's do, I think. Then it's still the Mortcatus that is important, that it add also 1 to the attacks if it has the spear or the blade. And then there is the standard build that add 1 if you run or charge with such unit, and so it's always nice. What has been changed that is quite important is the shield wall, because now it's not anymore that reroll the save, but it's the ability of the night out, so that you can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. The command can only be used by this unit Mortec Hecatos, and this unit must receive the command in your modifier, positive or negative. So remember about this. Also the positive are ignored. 2 save rolls for attacks that target this unit in that phase. So it's really quite intriguing. Here you have to choose when you go against an enemy if to use this shield ward or the impenetrable ranks, so improve the ward save of the unit. Because if the opponent unit has a big rand, it's better to use the shield ward. If it gives a lot of mortal wounds, maybe it's better to use the impenetrable ranks. So you have to adapt. Eventually, remember that you have also the option about the Lich Cavalus that can improve the amount of attacks that this unit can bring. So you can combine, think about Surmason, Digicaulos and this unit. You can make that, you can make attacks, improve the rend and improve the wounds, the roll to wounds that you can gain, and at the same time improve also other things, because you can have the spells that improve you, and even try to make that you can ignore the rend of the opponent. So this is something that you should really take note, because it's a unit that can be really quite good, and in some way it's even better than before, because before it was only late about the Patrix Elite eventually to be able to resist quite a lot. Now it's available for the Legends, and so I think that you can combine a lot, because you can combine with different supports and the spells and so on to gain even more, and also abilities. So you can really quite, say, have fun about using such ones. Eventually, remember that Catagos you can improve also the rolls if you need. So there are a lot of ways that can make you having quite a lot of fun with the basic truth of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And I've had the Mortisan card. This is a unit that has been the same as before, but has changed in important ways. So now the amount of wounds is 5, that it's more than before that was 4, and it's make this unit much more resilient to the damage, obviously. The amount of attacks has changed. We have lost the amount of attacks for the shield, but we have gained 1 attack for the halberd, and it's better like this, because it's more probable that you are able to make damage with this halberd than the shield themselves. Then it remains an elite, so it can use commands on itself. Then it has the ability Subband Protectors, that is like the bodyguard rule. So if a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper hero is within 3 inches of this unit before you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to that hero, or instead making a ward roll for a wound or mortal wound that will be allocated to that hero, roll a dice on a 2+, that wound or mortal wound is allocated to this unit instead of that hero, but it cannot be negated, so pay attention. Anyway, now this unit is much more reliable, because you have to remember that you could think about this unit as a sort of reservoir of wounds for the Mortisans and the heroes and so on. But now you can replenish the models with the Boneshaper, the Mortisan Boneshaper, or for example the Arcan. So you have options to be able to sustain such losses of wounds to the models. So I think that it's quite useful now, because it has more usable and it can be replenished, so you don't have to think that it doesn't anything less than make the bodyguard literally to the heroes, but it can also be used to contain the damages. And then it has an ability that it's the same that it has before, but it has changed in a bad way, because now it's only once per battle and not as before for combat. So once use this ability once per battle, after the unit has fought for the first time in the combat phase. The command can only be used by a model in this unit. This unit must receive the command. This unit can fight for a second time in that phase. The strike last effect applies to this unit when he fights for the second time. So remember that there is the last strike effect. At the same time, it's something that you have to pay quite a lot of attention when to use such command ability, because you have only once per battle to attack a second time. That it was one of its main, I can say, efforts to do in the previous one. But sincerely, I think that it's much better as it is now, this unit, because you can replenish the models, and these make a lot of difference, because you can heal, you can make that it come back, so you can make a bigger unit and replenish them when they lose. At the same time, you can protect multiple heroes, and so you can have quite a lot of fun using such unit in a lot of different ways, both for offense and mainly for defense, to absorb the wounds that otherwise would be problematic. So I think that it's really something that you have to think about your style, but try to play eventually in your army. And I've had the Necropolis Talkers. This has seen a little change about the characteristics, so the wounds has moved from 4 to 5, so much welcome, and the melee weapons has changed a bit. We have lost 1 attack from the Spirit Blades, that from 5 it's now 4, but we gained that the Dry Falcon to have a 2 hit of 3+ instead of the previous 4+, so it's much welcome. It remains an elite, so it can use commands to itself. And at the start of the combat phase, we can have the quadriac aspect, so you must choose one of the following aspect. It can be that add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by this unit, so you can reach F2+ to hit directly. We make that there is add 1 to the save for attacks that target this unit, so having a save of 3+ in the combat. Add 1 to the wound rolls for attack made by this unit, so wounded on 2. And considering that you have a lot of ways to improve the hit roll, it's quite welcome, this thing. Or add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit melee weapons. So it means that you can make a lot of damage. And remember that you have also the possibility to use one particular thing, and this is the command abilities. So it means that you can use, for example, bludgeon, so you can substitute the way to make a rend and so on, and improve the rend, the damage, or that. You can make a lot of options, so pay attention to what you choose because it's quite important. And then there is the ability that it makes that you can have this, use this command ability in your hero phase. The command can only be used by a mod in this unit, and this unit must receive the command. Until your next hero phase, the unit can run and still charge later in this unit. In addition, until your next hero phase, mods in this unit can pass across terrain feature in the same manner as mods that can fly, so you can avoid the terrain feature. So it's really quite nice, and really, this is something that you have to think about, because you have also to remember one thing. You can replenish such unit, because you have the Boneshaper and Arcan and so on, that let you, on a 3+, be able to gain back a model that it has 5 wounds, so it becomes really more hard to kill such units. So if you make, for example, a unit of 6 model, it's much better to make them last on the battlefield. Even if you lose something, you are able to replenish them, and each one that you replenish, it's much welcome, because it's a model of full and heavy destroying, so really quite amazing. And I've had the Lich Cabros, that it's one of my favorite models about the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and I like so much that I created my own Lich Cabros. For example, my Lich Centaurus, eventually you can find the playlist in the description about, and I like quite a lot this model. I hoped that the amount of wounds would have been improved, but it's still 7. But at least it's improved its damaging, because it has lost its shield attack, but it has 2 attacks more for the blade that it has rammed, so I like really quite good this one. And then it's always fun to see that it has more attacks with the mount than the rider itself, even at least the damage it's better for the rider. And we have so that it is on mount, obviously. I'm still waiting the one on foot. The Wheel of the Legions, it's one of the ability, and it's important because once per turn this unit can issue a command to a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit without a command point being spent. So it's a really quite amazing one, because it means that with this you are able to make that you are for free having a command ability issued. I quite like this one. It has Unstoppable Charge as ability, so that after this unit makes a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified charge roll for that charge move. For each 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. In addition, this unit can move an extra inch when it pilings if it made a charge move in the same turn. This is really quite important, because it's a way to make mortal wounds charging. And remember that you have the option about reform ranks, so that you can detach, retreat, and then charge again, so make again such unstoppable charge each of your turns. So I think that it's quite useful. And then we have the ability, the command ability that it has, so that you can use this command ability in your hero phase. Remember such thing, because it means that you can combine subtly with other command abilities that you can cast in the charge command and so on eventually, because anyway you use this in the hero phase. That unit that receives the command must be a friendly Ossiarch Bonereaper unit until your next hero phase. Add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit melee weapons. so only melee. And this is quite welcome, because anyway it's a way to improve the attacks of this same unit or other units. But remember that it's also something that cut what it was done previously, so that it was leaving the Lich Cavalry in the background to improve the number of attacks of the Mortal Crawlers, that now it's not anymore possible because they are shooting these ones, ranged ones attacks, instead it's only for the melee weapons. So it's a bit of pity, it loses some bit of flexibility, but at the same time it's one of the main damage dealer that you have about the characters, and it's free for all the legions, but free. I mean that you can choose and integrate without any issue in any legion. Still, I love such mod, and I think that I continue to play at least one of them, one or two, but still you have to remember that you have such limitation. But at the same time, remember that you can use artifacts and so on to improve its value on the battlefield, so that it could be really quite intriguing. For example, with some helmets on, that's just about, you have to decide what combination you want to create and bring up. Eventually you have also add the Arcanton to make it a mage, eventually, that it's still an option available. So this is a model that I love. I realized that it's not so great as before, but at the same time I still think that it can do quite an amazing job for yourself. And then we had the Cavalry Death Riders. This is a unit that has seen quite a lot of changes. First thing, from 12 inch of movement has been decreased to 10 inches, similar to the Lich Cavalry itself. Has seen a change about the weapons, so the rand has been gained for the spear, but has seen the spear the same decrease about the hit, so from 3 plus as now a 4 plus. But I want to remember you that this is quite important, but you have also to remember that you have to choose which one to use, and it's better maybe, surely, the blade when you have a unit of 5, so the basic Cavalry Riders. But if you gain more model for that same unit, it's better if you think about the spear, because at least the real model can anyway fight. Otherwise you'll not be able to bring also the second line of the riders to fight. So it's really quite intriguing. Moreover, because I want to remember you that there is the ability about the netherite weapons that now has work without having to declare and so on. So it can explode the hits, and having more model that can make attacks that explode, I think that it's worth, but it's up to you to decide eventually. Then we have the champion that, as usual, add 1 to the attack characteristic, but of the modest melee weapon, so it means also the mount. Then we had the standard bearer that, as usual, being +1 to the roll of charge and run. And then we had the unstoppable charge. This is what was the Death Rider wedge for the Cavalry Death Riders, and it's the same ability that we've seen about the Lich Cavalry. So after this unit made a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the modified charge roll for that charge move. For each 5+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. In addition, this unit can move an extra 3 inch when it palins if it made a charge move in the same turn. And remember that you have the command ability that is reform ranks. So it means that you can detach, retreat from the combat and then charge again in the same turn. So you can reapply such thing. So it's really quite useful. And now we have a change about the combat ability of Death Rider Wedge, because before it was the unstoppable charge for the Cavalry Death Riders. Now it has a different effect that it's quite nice. Maybe not used often, but quite nice. You can use this command ability in the charge phase. The command can only be used by this unit Mortec Hekatos, and this unit must receive the command. Until the end of that turn, the models in this unit can pass over other models with a wound characteristic of 3 or less in that same unit, in the same way that the models gain fly. So it means that if the enemy unit has 3 or less, you can bypass them and can charge over them, so the unit without having to be blocked about the screening of the opponent units. It has to have 3 or less, okay, but still it's nice. Or you can use such charge in a way to make that they are blocking something, and you can make the positioning better. So I think that it's really quite nice because it's more strategic this way. So it's something that maybe you don't use quite often, but it's really something that you have to remember because it's something that can make your unit more, say, flexible to decide where to go to charge. So really quite nice. And then we had the Mortar Clover. This is the catapult of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. It's amazing one, and the profile itself has not changed. It has been changed the one about the weapons. And sincerely, even if you could think otherwise, it's much better now. Because okay, it has lost the possibility to have each wound making 5 damage, but it has improved the amount of hits and the amount of rand, so it's easier to make that damage. So it's pretty nice now. Anyway, about the weapons, we can find that it has free profile and it has lost the 2 special attacks that I had before that it was quite useless. I never used them even if I thought about, because it was quite difficult to be able to use those attacks. So now we have that the Cauldron of Torment, it's 6 to 18 range, it's 2d6 attacks, 3+3+ to hit and wound, no rend, 2 damage, so it's a sort of barrage literally. It's then the Necrotic Skull that it's 6 to 24 as inch as range, 4 attacks, 3+3+, rend 1, 2 damage, so a bit less than before, but quite nice because at least has a rend. Then we had the Cursed Steed that it's 6 to 36 inch, 1 single attack, 2+ to hit, 3+ to wound, 2 of rend, and the 3+3 damage. Here, if you go to compare this with before, we have lost technically the Lich Caval's ability that could improve the amount of attacks that the catapult could make. But remember that we again the Ossiarch that can make that again sort of not delete weapons for the attack of shooting. So it means that with a 6 you can explode the attacks, so make even more attacks. So I think that if you're going to use the Mortar Clovers, and you can think about gaining about 2 of them, because anyway it's a war machine, so you have a limit of 2, and it's anyway also a monster. And with the Ossiarch you can make that you can gain quite a lot of bonuses, and it's even better. So I think that it's worth about this. Remember that that catapult is simply that you have to choose when you shoot which one of the profile you're going to use. You can't mix them. And then you had Deathly Barrage, that it's a really quite intriguing ability, and it's really a support about your own units of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, because after this unit shoot, roll a dice for each enemy unit that was targeted by this unit attacks in that phase. Add 2 to the roll if that unit was targeted by all of these unit attack in the same shoot, and on a 5+, so 3+ if you concentrate all the attacks on the same unit, the strike last effect is applied to that unit until the end of that turn. So it's really quite intriguing, because it means that you can technically shoot more units and try to, for example, make in the last strike effect to a lot of units, or you can concentrate and try on a 3+ to make a unit gain the last strike, and so make that your unit can gain an advantage against that one. Okay, you lost that you first had with the old Battletome 5 damage for each attack, but it was quite often prevented by the amount of saving that those units could have. So I think that it's not so bad, because you can gain more attacks. It's a sort of having a whirlwind of the Space Marine, but now in the Ossiarch Bonereapers, because we can gain from the barrage of the 2d6 to more specialized and direct hits. So I think that it's quite nice. Moreover, the single hit that you gain anyway can make even more wounds technically than a single shot of even 2 catapults that was passing through. So you can gain quite a lot. You have simply to decide how you can implement everything. And really, the Mortar Clover is associated totally with a Mortisan Mortifactor if you want to create something that it's a perfect combination to deploy on the battlefield in such a way, and also give bonuses to the other units that go to close combat. So it's quite nice. I like quite a lot, and it's more simple to use in such a way the Mortar Clover itself. And I've had the Ossiarch Harvest. This is a model that has seen a more stabilized effect than everything else, because it doesn't have anymore a table of damages, so now it works perfectly always at maximum potential, and I like such thing. Remember that it has also missile weapons, that sometimes it's forgotten, but it's always welcome. But it doesn't have anymore the rules about the different of weapons, so mortal wounds or so on to use. So it's always as it is. But remember that this is perfect combined with the Mortisan Ossi factor, and for example, you can use the command ability to improve again. So for example, it's nice combined with the Lich Caval's command ability, the Bludgeon command ability, so you can improve quite a lot the profile about such model eventually. But the real thing about such model is the ability Bone Harvest, that not change too much, but the real change is the range. So, Bone Harvest, roll a dice each time a slain model within 6 inches of this unit is removed from play. And remember, slain model, not enemy, not friendly, any slain model. If the slain model is within range of more than one friendly unit with this ability, so more of the Ghost Harvesters, you must pick which unit will use this ability. On a 4+, you can pick one friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers unit within 6 inches of this unit. So it means the Ghost Harvester itself, another unit within 6 inches that it's not the one that suffered the mortal wound, the slain models. So pay attention. If the slain mod has a wound statistic of 4 or less, you can heal one wound allocated to this unit you pick. So it's a bit less than before. If the slain mod has a wound statistic of 5 or more, you can heal up to 3 wounds allocated to the unit you picked. If no wounds has been allocated to the unit you pick, you can return a number of slain models to have a combined wound statistic equal to or less than the number of wounds you could have healed. But remember that are separate, so you can't combine them so to make come back more wounds, more models, but each of the slain model count. So you can't use, for example, choose a model of 4 or less to make come back a model with, for example, a couple of step riders using 3 of those models, but you can only come back the one couple of step riders if you make that the model that has been killed it has 5 or more wounds. So pay attention about such details. Anyway, this it's something that in some way has decreased in power, and it's a pity because even before it was not so used, but it's quite nice if you apply this, for example, with the crematorians, because the crematorians tend to eventually resist, but if they die, they explode to the opponent, and you can make them try to make come back those models. Then you can also heal the unit eventually, but you can make such a cycle eventually, and not having the battleship test, the Ossiarch Bonereapers army, it's also that you can ignore till you have at least one model, you can anyway try to make them come back. And remember that you can use also lossy from other side to make it come back. And remember that it's not about losses that you can have about combat or so on, but that there is a slain model within 6 inches, so it can be from any source, and you can try to make come back units, at least models of units. So it's really quite intriguing and something that you have to remember. And if you use this as crematorians, in a way, remember that with the new ability of the crematorians, technically there is most that if die, it's 10, 5+, that technically you can throw in face of the opponent to kill it. Okay, I hope that it doesn't die, but eventually it's okay. And remember that it's a monster. And I've had the Morgas Archive. This is a unit that improved and worsened in different ways compared to before. So you have really to think about. First thing that has improved is the movement, that from 9 inch is now 10 inch. About the profile of attacks, it's always the same. It's up to you to decide which one you prefer. Sincerely, I tend to prefer a bit the halberds, because it's less attack but much more damage eventually with a both the rand. It gained the elite, so now it can issue commands on itself, and I think that it's much welcome this one. It has fly, and it has Herald of Focus 1 that has changed quite a lot. So enemies cannot receive commands whether are within 3 inches of any friendly units with these abilities. So it means that they can't gain, for example, inspiring presence. And so this it's quite welcome as thing. Then it has grim opponents. If you make an unmodified charge roll of 8 plus for this unit, the strike first effect applies to the unit until the end of the turn. And I think that it's really quite nice because it means that if you are able to reach that 8 unmodified one on the dice roll, you gain an effect by itself. So it's quite nice, but you have to roll such dice to gain such effect, so it's not immediate. Then we have necromantic custodians that make that the unit has a ward of 5 plus if they are wholly within to range of any Ossiarch Bonereapers heroes. And this is the downside, because now you had to be wholly within. Before they were by themselves, so they were not needed to have someone around or so on. Still, because they are Ossiarch Bonereapers, they still have the 6 plus word save anyway. But I thought that it was better before. And anyway, remember that you have also the Mortifactor, that it can make that this unit can gain also some bonuses eventually. So you can really think about how to coordinate. But remember that the Mortifactor is much slower than this. So you have to think how you can use before you send such unit to do some things. So pay attention, because it has some bonuses that are quite important and quite interesting you choose, because even the simple heralds of Arcus 1 could be really quite amazing. But at the same time, you have to think it's worth or you prefer something else to use. And it's always the problem of such unit, because they are always missing that little detail that make them really awesome. And now we have the Morghast Arbingers. This is technically the same that we've seen about the Morghast Sakai, so the improvement of the movement, the choosing about the weapons that you want to have, again the elite, the fly, it has always, it has changed the herald of the cursed ones, so again it forbids the commands within 3 inches of the enemy units, so it's quite intriguing. This one, it has still the grim opponent, so first strike if you make a charge of 8 plus, and it has this, the difference compared to Archai. If the Archai were about the word better, about having a wholly within 12 inch hero, this one is that can make that during the deployment, instead of setting up this unit on the battlefield, you can place it on side and say that it's already on the battlefield, and so put the unit in reserve. And if you do so at the end of your movement phase, you can set up this unit on the battlefield more than 9 inch from all enemy units. So here you have really to think about how you want to use, because technically the ambush it's not bad, it's really quite intriguing. But the problem is they are able to make a charge, they're able to make something, moreover because this unit has anyway a movement of 10 inches, so you can make that it has gain another 3 inches, so 13 inches of movement, you can make a lot. So this is really useful. This is the problem about such type of unit, because there are other units that maybe they can be more useful about damage and so on. This one has the option about combining its movement, the possibility to charging it the first strike, the possibility to gain that they make that the opponent can't use the inspiring presence because they don't allow the command abilities. So they have their potential. The problem is how to make them really do boost damage available. Moreover, you have to remember that you have the Mortifactor that can improve also eventually its abilities, but the problem is the range of the Mortifactor, if it's able to cast its own spell and so on. So you are really to think about having these ones and how you can sustain these. But it's not so bad, but still miss something in really using at the best such unit. And then we had Kainan and its Reapers. Sincerely, this is an amazing unit. I love the mod of Kainan itself, even if I don't have yet it. And about the Reapers, I think that it's funny, because they have the only archer of all the armies of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. It's crazy, this thing, because really, I hope that Game Workshop will going to be releasing the archers, or at least some army, some shooting armies related unit about the Ossiarch Bonereapers, because okay, we have the Ghost Harvester, okay, we have technically the mortar guards, but we don't have some normal shooters. So, okay. So, Kynan, it has 3+ of save and 8 wounds. It is a wizard that has 1 to cast and 1 to spell. We have lost the actionary strike, but we gain that it has bone tight. This unit has a tight score that starts at 0 at the start of the battle. Each time an enemy mod is slain by this unit's attack, increase that unit tight score by 1. If that slain model has a wound characteristic of 4 or more, increase the wound tight score of 2 instead of 1. And at the start of your hero phase, if this unit has a tight score of 1 or more, you can reduce its tight score by 1. If you do so, you can pick one of the following abilities. Built for war, pick one friendly Kynan Reapers unit wholly within 6 inches of this unit, and you can return up to 3 slain models to it. To notice, you can have only one Kynan Reapers, you can't have multiple Kynan Reapers, okay. Anyway, this is amazing because it means that you can replenish such unit, otherwise it's easy killed. At least you have remember one model at least of the Kynan Reapers remaining. Invigorated until your next hero phase, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapon used by this unit and by friendly Kynan Reapers unit wholly within 6 inches of this unit. And it has gained also Dire Ultimatum, that is a spell that has a casting value of 4 and a range of 3+. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. Until your next hero phase, any attack made by melee weapon by that unit must target this unit. The range of this spell must be concentrated about the model itself. Here the only problem is that technically it should be able to be improved by Arkham. But being with a range of 3 inch, it should be that it's in close combat. So I think that will be added quite soon, the limitation that in a FAQ, limitation that it will be only not modifiable, because we have seen also for other models, for other units that has such option, and I think that it will be such, otherwise it will be quite problematic. About the Kynan Reapers, we again Dark Efficiency. So if a friendly mere Kynan, so the Kynan, the character Kynan, is within 3 inches of this unit, before you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to that hero, or instead of making a ward roll for that wound or mortal wound that would allocate it to that hero, so Kynan, roll a dice on a 2+ that wound or mortal wound that is allocated to this unit instead of Mr. Kynan and cannot be negated. So it's like having bodyguard like the Mortis guard. The roll is the same. We have also gained the Tight Reapers. So each mod in this unit count as 3 models for the purposes of controlling objectives. And really, this it's amazing because even a couple of models can be better than an entire unit of the opponent. So quite nice. Anyway, this model it's something that I think that will be fucked a bit. The real problem is the amount of Kynan Reapers that you can have, because there are really quite few and it's quite problematic to keep them. At the same time, it's an amazing model. It's beautiful. Sincerely, I would have preferred to have an executioner like this, not referred as Kynan, but generally as a general Ossiarch Bonereapers, Mortisan, or so on, to be able to use separately and have other bonuses. Still, it's quite nice. And then we had the Mortisan Bonereapers. This is a model that has a beautiful miniature, but problems with the profile. The generic profile is the same. It improved the range of the attacks, so now it's -2 instead of the previously -1. It's still a wizard that so make that he can cast one spell in your hero phase and attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase. The problem is that has lost Deathly Touch, so it doesn't do any more mortal wounds eventually with the attacks. And then we had the rule Bonereapers that each time this unit fight, you can say that it will unleash a Reaping Strike. If you do so, add 2 to the attack characteristic of this unit melee weapon until the end of the phase. But this unit can do only target units that have 5 or more models, so it's not so good against with like heroes, and it doesn't have so many wounds that it can really battle successfully against units that has quite a lot of power about the numbers. But it's this that make it so unusable. So we had the spell that it's improved, this one, and it's South Blast that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12 inch. And remember that with Arcane at least it becomes 18. So it starts to recast at the start of any one phase before your next hero phase. You can pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and if that unit is within 3 inches, so in close combat with the caster, that unit suffers 3 mortal wounds instead of 3. So it's like having an Arcane Missile, technically, a similar sort. The real problem is that to unleash the full potential, it has 3 inches, so it's in close combat. Nice, but not so nice. And anyway, the range otherwise that you have Arcane in your rooster, it's not so great because it's 12 inches to do D3 mortal wounds eventually. This is a model that really, or it's really cheap, so that you include because you had to spend some of the points in your rooster and you don't have any other choices, or you need some number of Mortisan and it's cheap, or there are not real option to take this because it doesn't have something that it makes really enjoyable to play with other than Ygnimortoi itself. Now we had Nightmare Predator that it's an end spell with a casting value of 5 and a range of 12 inch. If starts to recast, cast and set up this and the spell within the range and visible to the caster and more than 1 inch from all models other than spells and invocation. Only Ossiarch Bonereapers wizard can attempt to summon this and the spells, and a wizard cannot cast this and the spell if it's garrisoned and can't move in a garrison till this and the spell is bounded to him. It's a predatory one and has a 8-inch movement and can fly. It's bounded, so as usual it's associated to that mage, so till the mage doesn't being killed, this stay on the battlefield, and it cannot cast also other spells. And as a bit as Death Incarnate. After the end spells has moved, roll a dice for each unit that has any model it passes across. On a 2+, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then the commanding player can pick one unit within 1 inch of this and the spells and roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On 2 to 5, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, so added D3. Or on a 6, the unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. The ability has not effect on Ossiarch Bonereapers units, so it means that technically you could have from 2d3 to 1d3 plus 1d6 mortal wounds, so it's not bad. It's a good to damaging the opponent units, so it's quite nice. Moreover, because the first d3 units can be done to multiple units, so it can be really quite intriguing. And then we can start with the end spells, and the first one is Solstice Canyon. This is a summoning that has a casting value of 6+. If successfully cast, set up this end spell anywhere on the battlefield that is visible to the caster and more than 1 inch from all models, ever other spells or invocations. Only Ossiarch Bonereapers wizard can attempt to summon this and the spells. It is predatory and it has a 8-inch movement and it can fly. It's bonded, so it means that it's bonded to the caster, so when the caster dies, this disappears. And it has as ability Ossiarch Sentry that make that model with a wound characteristic of 1 or 2 that are within 6 inch of this and the spell cannot contest objective. This ability has no effect on Ossiarch Bonereapers units, so it's a way to make that even if you are having other units around, you are able to control the objective and the opponent is not able to make some contest. Obviously, the unit with 3 or more wounds can, but at least you can forbid some other units to keep those objective or contest. So it's sincerely quite intriguing as one. It's strategical more than anything else. And I had the Bone Tight Shriek that I think that it will be one of the best and the spells that you can take about the Ossiarch Bonereapers and also other and the spells. It's a summoning with a 5+ and a range of 12 inch. It's actually cast, you have to make it and the spells within the range visible to the caster but more than 1 inch from models and the spells and other invocation. only Ossiarch Bonereapers wizard can attempt to summon this spell. It's Predator with a move of 8 inch and can fly. It's bounded, so you cannot cast with the same mage other and the spells, and when the wizard die, these disappear. And it has as ability 2 abilities. The Portrait of Doom, that it's one of the best, that unit cannot receive the Inspiring Presence or Rally command while they are within 12 inch of this and the spell. It's amazing. This ability has not effect on Ossiarch Bonereapers units. Luckily, because, okay, Inspiring Presence would have not need the need about the Ossiarch Bonereapers, but Rally now we are able to use. It would have been problematic otherwise. And No Escape, subtract 1 from word rolls for unit within 12 inch of this and the spell. This ability has no effect on Ossiarch Bonereapers. Luckily, otherwise to be problematic because the word is based on the Ossiarch Bonereapers. So this is maybe the best one that you can choose, because you can forbid the Inspired Presence to the enemy, the Rally one, and it has 12 inch, so not bad at all, because it's quite amazing. And more, you can even subtract 1 to the word rolls, even completely making them disappear in some cases. So it's amazing as another spell. Then we had the Bone Tight Nexus, that is the specific faction terrain for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. This it's a beautiful shanky feature and I love it, but we had to see some things about the abilities and about the setup, because you have to set up this after the territories are determined. You can set up this faction terrain feature wholly within your territory and more than 3 inch from all objectives and other terrain feature. If this restriction means that you cannot set up this faction terrain feature, you can remove one terrain feature that is wholly or partially within your territory and attempt to set up this faction terrain feature again. But if it is still impossible to set up this terrain feature, then it is not used. This could be quite a problem, because it means that you have to have a battlefield that it's okay, full of terrain feature, but at the same time not full, and they had to be at least medium size and not small ones. Otherwise, you have problems to deploy such terrain features. So it will be quite problematic eventually. So you have to think that you have to have such a terrain feature. At the same time, you risk not to be able to deploy it. So it's quite something that you have to pay attention about how to deploy. For example, if you have in tournament or so on, the terrain feature in the way that you can still do such things. And remember that if both players can set up faction terrain feature at the same time, then you have to roll off to see which one can decide to deploy it first. Then remember that it's impossible, so you cannot move a model over this terrain feature unless it can fly, because the fly simply it can move over it. But you have to remember that you can't anyway move onto it and so stay there. So even if it can fly, so you can simply make that it can fly over, but not on directly and stay on there. And then we can see the abilities about such one, that it's the Dedicates, that has 4 different effects that you determine in your hero phase. You can choose which one to pick. All of them are that you pick one enemy unit within 18 inch of this terrain feature and add 1 to the roll of any if any enemy model has been slain within 12 inch of this terrain feature in the previous turn. So you can improve of 1 the dice rolled to apply the effect. So we have the Punishment of Agony, that on a 4+, start at 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that enemy unit until your next hero phase. So it can be quite intriguing, this one. Then we have Punishment of Death, that make that you roll on a 4+, and that unit suffer D3 mortal wounds. Quite amazing. And then we have, it's quite having the Arcane Bolt available, it's really quite amazing. Punishment of Ignorance, that make that on a 4+, start at 1 from casting rolls or enchanting rolls for that unit until your next hero phase, selecting one enemy wizard or priest unit, so it can be quite nice. We have Punishment of Lethargy, that make that on a 4+, that unit cannot run until your next hero phase, and in addition, start out free from charge rules for that unit until your next zero phase. So it means that you can forbid, for example, unit to go to conquer an objective because it can't add the charge, the rolling for the option about the running, or eventually also you can limit it about the charging because taking off 3 inch, it means that even if it's quite close to the enemy, it risks not to be able to charge. It's really quite intriguing, this one. It's quite a sort of defensive and strategical one, this ability. Okay, you have any way to roll a 4+ for all of such abilities, but at the same time, they are quite amazing. And if you had that enemy has been slain, you can improve. Remember that it's only a unit, but still it's a sharing feature that I suggest you to have for sure, because I like the sharing feature itself, because it's a really amazing one. And at the same time, I find it that this is something that can improve and really cooperate greatly with any of your rules that you can create about your armies for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Talking about the points, here we have to remember that these are not fixed. It's more like writing on clay than in stone. So really, you have to remember about this. And we have seen quite a lot of changes. These changes are compared to the previous updated points. I taken such referring by the AoS Coach as channel. I suggest you eventually to follow it because it has done quite a lot of works. Sincerely, if you go to see this, you can see that there is a really great announcement of points and it's much more costly. Luckily, if I compare to the rules that I preferred before, I saved quite a lot of points that I wasn't able to use, and so I can absorb quite a lot of such amount of points. But some of the increasing point are, I don't understand why, because if you think the Archcavallo Xanthos, it's useful, yes, but it's quite limited. The Liege Cavallos, it costs a bit less, luckily, than the Archcavallo Xanthos, but it doesn't have something really specific, because its own ability has been even decreased in power, so it's not so great. If you go to see, the only units that see a decrease on point are the Carlos de Fridas, that are better now, and the Soul Stealer Carrion, that it's nice, but okay, it's okay that it is. The only ones that keep the same are the Bonereapers Shaker, the Mortal Clover, the Nightmare Predator that has seen, and obviously the Mortisan Ossiarch, it's a new model, so you have to refer about this. But for some models, I don't understand why there has been such thing. I can understand about Arkham, because it's okay. About the Gothic Harvester, because it's better now, but it has a lot of rules. So, but I can consider that thanks to the Nadirite weapon battle trait, it's much better. The Mortis Guard, okay, by the rules it's better because it can be anyway replenish the unit. I can think that it's okay, but it's a great amount of point more. Catagos, it's the one that technically it's much better and it is a few points. If you go to see about Mr. Khan and Cannon Reapers, it has a crazy increase of point, and sincerely, I hope that that spell will be corrected, otherwise there will be quite some problem about. What I don't understand it's the Morghast Archive and the Morghast Harbinger, the increase on point, because it's crazy. Those amount of points are crazy, really. Even if I think about the Ossifactor, and I think the combination that I can bring with the Ossifactor to improve such models, still I don't find them so amazing, really, because anyway I had to create a combination to be sure that the spell it's okay, so that I can increase the range about the enhancement thanks to the Mortisan Ossifactor. The case point about the Mortal Guard, okay, because they are much better now, so I can't talk. About the Mortisan Boneshaper, I can think that it's okay, but I have yet had the increase of point about the Stalkers and the Immortis Guard. Why I should have also about the Boneshaper itself. About the Soulmason, okay, it's better than before, I admit. It's different and so on, but in my opinion, it's a bit too much, 40 points of increasing. And if you think about the Soul Reaper, why increase that the points of such mod? It was useless before, that it was costing less, and it's even useless now. So it doesn't have any real reason, because if I choose about the Mortisan Ossifactor and the Soul Reaper, the the OC factor is better than the Soul Reaper in close combat. So I can't understand about such. Nagash, I don't care because it's amazing and so on. Sincerely, it's a really great model, but I don't use it, so I discard it immediately because I don't need it. And Mortian, it's okay, an increase, but I usually don't play the Mortisan Praetorians, so the Praetorians, so I don't need them. But anyway, because the spell itself, it's worth such increase of point, and anyway, it doesn't cost too much. It costs even less than anyway the Sun Mason. And so these are something that you have really to think about, because if you go to see, you can really create a lot of combination, but the amount of points that has been increased, in my opinion, are not really related about what the unit can do. Anyway, you have to study and so on about what combination you can gain and so on, because there are a lot of options that you can have, both for the combination of the artifact, the command traits with the unit that can support each other. In particular, the charters are perfect to support the different units, because the Bone Shaper, the Soul Mason, and the OC Factor are amazing to create different combination. The one that lost more, it's the Liege Cavalers, because before I was playing 2 of them, and now even one, it's almost something that it's really difficult to just to create. But anyway, it's the only real single model that can go to challenge the enemy heroes and so on. So anyway, it's useful. So you have really to pay quite a lot of attention about such, and I think that soon we'll see a change about such points, because they will be considered not so great, and there will be an adjustment. But it's a bit of pity about such things. So, from Dynamod, it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video, or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again to the next time.